All right, we are live. Looks like we'll have some people joining us here in a second. Give it just 1 minute. All right, we are live in the TGfU session, Teaching Games for Understanding, for the Phys Ed Summit 2.0. This is our second version of the Phys Ed Summit. My name is Matt Pomeroy, as you can see on the screen. You can find me on Twitter at physed_Pomeroy. I'm here chatting today with our facilitator. Our facilitator is David Moore. I just want to have David just give a quick introduction.
Or good afternoon, or wherever you are in the world. My name's Dave. I'm currently in Germany right now, in the nice warm spring sunshine that we have coming out here. And I'm excited to talk about TGfU today.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you, man. So we've been connected kind of over the last month here, and just chatting about it here and there, and on Voxer, on Twitter, sharing presentations, and it's looking great. I'm not an expert in TGfU. I'm learning as I go. It wasn't something that was taught too much into, the American curriculum. But it's been cool just being able to connect with people, across the world and learn just a little bit more about the TGfU approach. So just want to give everyone just a little bit of information here about the Phys Ed Summit, and then Dave will get started on his TGfU presentation. First off, welcome to the Phys Ed Summit 2.0. Thank you for joining us on this amazing journey. Just right now, we're kind of streaming 4 to 5 live videos from one Google Plus page. So if there's some reason, like a video feed stops, we'll check out the conference program. We'll update it with new links and things like that. But I think we're going to be good to go here. I think things are rolling well. So first and foremost, though, we'd like to thank you, the participants, for taking time to attend the summit. As Amanda said in her keynote, our students matter, and thank you so much for being here to get better for them. You should each be proud of yourselves. Amazing PE community, and we're so excited to be a part of it. All right, the Phys Ed Summit would like to thank Spark PE for their sponsorship. Spark is a research-based partner with San Diego State University and a strong supporter of online physical education professional development. So check it out at sparkpe.org to learn more about that. Cool part about Spark PE, they are our sponsor. They're just throwing out some goodies after the conference. So as you learn, as you kind of take everything in, at the end we'll send out just a link for a little bit of a reflection for us, and if you do that, you'll be in for a drawing for a Spark Dance DVD, a physical education program, a summer institute registration, and like $150 gift certificate to the Spark store. So that'll be in a feedback survey, and then if you complete the survey by February 28th, you'll be entered for a drawing. Also, if you'd like to order, or if you'd like to get your PD hours or PDUs, there's a certificate then that comes out with that. So once you fill up the survey and you hit submit, you'll get that certificate sent to you in your email. So right after this, we'll have a short brain break by Jeff Mushkin, and then we're going to roll into our roundtable discussions. So that's about it. Again, the Phys Ed Summit is brought to you by, honestly, six physical educators that just kind of connected through a group called Physedagogy, and that's where we blog from. And the Phys Ed Summit was literally made by PE teachers, and everything was voted on by PE teachers out there. And then guys like David, who's waiting to present, just kind of said, hey, I want to volunteer and I want to help out and I want to present for the Phys Ed Summit. So everything was made for and created by our community, our online community, which is, I think, the coolest part about the whole thing. So again, just want to introduce you to David Moore. He's here for our Teaching Games for Understanding session.
All right, should we get going then?
I think it's time to roll, man. We got some people watching and they're ready to learn.
All right, okay. So I'm going to try this now. I'm going to share this presentation. Matt will tell me if it doesn't work. Are we up?
Looks great.
All right, okay. So, here we go. Who's this guy? I put this one in because nobody knows who I am. So I've been teaching for about 10 years. I've taught in 5 different countries, originally in New Zealand. I've taught the PYP, the primary years program, the MYP, the middle years program, and the New Zealand Health and Physical Education curriculum. So that's just a little bit of background about me. So I've experienced across the range of students. So what's in the name? Teaching gains for understanding, or I kind of combine it with something called game sense. Very similar ideas and ideals, and they work really well together. So it's if I refer to game sense or teaching gains for understanding, please, that they are the same thing. So how do I use it? I use it now. I used to be in elementary school for a while. I did about 7 years teaching the PYP from 3-year-olds up to grade 5 students. So I've used it from JK. And teaching gains for understanding is great because you can modify any game you want. You can use it to teach a concept that can be transferred, as it says there. The idea of space can be used in so many different games. It can be used in basketball, it can be used in football, it can be used in hockey, it can be used in netball, American football. But you don't need to play the sports to teach the concept. I found that, especially with the little students, the games are fun and they're adaptable, and you can change it as it goes to the student's strengths or the student's weaknesses. And this means that they can, they're enjoying it. Once they understand a game, then you can introduce a skill. So if you're doing a game that requires, even with a JK, you could do a game like bench ball, or you use mats because they are so tiny at that age, and they have to throw and catch to get the ball to the person on the mat. I know it doesn't sound much, but you can start simple and then you can introduce the skills where needed. So the different types of throwing, the different types of catching. One thing I have learned with TGfU is that students are at the center. They're having fun. It's not us telling them the skills that they need to have. It's them discovering and realizing that they need some skills to make this game work better. So they have a link to why we do the skills. Which, when I went to school, it was skills first, game second. This is reverse. We play the game first, we have fun, the skills come second. So I mean that's my elementary school examples. There are lots more examples. The bench ball one is just a very easy one. The older ages, you can do a lot of net and wall games. You can do a range of invasion games. The biggest thing for the elementary school with the younger kids is to use it with modified equipment. I really like volleyball. A dodgeball is great because it's soft, it's squishy. You use a mat instead of a bench. Those are the kind of things that I found have worked better than using a basketball or something that's going to scare a student off because they get hit.
Yeah, Dave, I think you bring up a good point. Just in the fact that I think some PE teachers feel like, well, we're playing basketball, or well, we're playing baseball, or well, we're doing this, and we have to use the official equipment and all that other stuff. And I feel like maybe not in elementary school as much, but even in middle school, I think a lot of middle school teachers feel that way, and there's no reason why you can't have those options and why you can't differentiate that learning for those different students too. And I love the fact that it's all about the students, and you want to make them feel comfortable and in a way that they can enjoy it. So thank you for adding that and talking about that. And just while I'm here, just sometimes we forget to teach about the concepts, and I do feel like in American physical education, sometimes we do focus a lot on the skills, but teaching the concepts and the game sense, like you're talking about, the knowledge behind why and when you use those skills is extremely important. So, great points so far. Thank you.
No, and you're right. Like you say, when you get to middle school, you're expected to do a sport. You're expected to use the baseball bats or the softball bats. But I mean, like I said, when I remember going to school, that was one kid with a bat and the rest, half the class sitting and half the class fielding with the gloves. And you might touch the ball twice in a lesson. And, I was a sporty kid, so even then, to modify a game and have smaller numbers, and you can still use a baseball bat or a softball bat, but you might use a different type of ball. So they're still getting the same idea, but it's a modified. We're teaching them the understanding of how to play the game, and then we're giving them the skills so they can play the game. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Plus, it's you get into the small side, and like you say, everyone's involved and everyone's active and everyone's a part, and then they'll get it a whole lot quicker just because they are a part and because they are involved and engaged. So awesome stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to move on to my next one. So I'm teaching the MYP at the moment, which has just changed recently to be more conceptual than it used to be. And these can be used as a way to introduce lots of concepts, the teaching games for understanding. You can have, it might just not be a sport, it might be, like I say down there, it could be communication. You might be looking at a unit that's working on communication. You play an invasion game that you need to communicate, otherwise it doesn't work. We look at that as the skill instead of throwing and catching. The concept of teamwork is also really important, that is involved with the communication, and you can combine those two into one go. Again, they're fun, they're engaging, they're student-centered. The kids enjoy playing them. But it's also, I remember Mel talked in her TGfU presentation about the questioning and how you stop and you start, and that's really important as well. You might need to stop the kids and say, well, why is your team not working? How can it work? And initiate that discussion with students, which is going to deepen their understanding of the concept that you're looking at. Space is a huge one, especially invasion games, and also net and wall games. We did a unit here in Bonn at Bonn International School where I'm teaching, and we did lacrosse. Now I took the lacrosse sticks away, and we looked at playing a game because we were looking at the concept of space. We played team ball or defend the cone. Now by taking the sticks out, it meant the kids were more comfortable and they could get the understanding of using space and movement and those kind of things. Once we'd finished that unit, we did a unit on handball. Now straight away we started talking and using their prior knowledge of the lacrosse unit to how can we use space. And this time we had a handball, or we'd use a similar sized dodgeball, which isn't as hard as a handball, to throw and catch and pass around and see how they moved. And again, communication came in with it again. How do we talk to each other? How do we know that someone's standing over there with lots of space? Further down, I'll explain some of these games that I use quite often and how they actually work as well. So
yeah, just to add in that, I mean, just with my middle school students, like when we start a volleyball unit, the funniest thing is when you start teaching it with a teaching games for understanding approach, like you actually start playing volleyball under the net, and the serve's going to the net and the ball is just rolling on the ground. But again, we can get into games almost instantly because you don't have to teach all the skills. You're teaching the concepts, and you're applying those concepts in a different type of a game, that modified game. And You know, it's funny, they kind of laugh at it at first, like, why are we playing volleyball underneath the net, and all those different things, and but then they really get it, and then they really understand how to attack the net and how to pass it to teammates, and like you say, um, how to just communicate in that way where they don't have to worry about their skills being 100% there yet. Um, so again, just sharing from my experience how beneficial it can be for those students, again, in U.S. schools too. They absolutely love it. And then by the time you get to more of the real games, less modifications, um, everybody's got it and everybody understands it, and the games are so much better. Um, so if you haven't, try it. Give it a shot. So
Yeah, like you say, like volleyball's a great one. I mean, it's a hard one because it is such a skill-based game, but it's a great game. But you need to have those to understand it, to why you use the skills. So space is one that can be, it's a different type of space. You know, we're aiming for the space, where is the space in the court? So we're using that concept of space, but we're just twisting it a little bit. I also talk about time and how do we make time in a volleyball game, and it's all to do with height. And so there's playing those games with, you say on the ground, or with a lower net, or with a low net on a 45-degree angle, or throwing and catching, where they start throwing and catching instead of just like trying to serve it over and never get over, or using a beach ball, which is the most like harmless thing that you can use, but you're still playing volleyball and they're still getting the idea, but they can actually get a game going, get a rally going. This, unfortunately, sometimes you put a volleyball in, like you said, serves are going under the net, serves are going nowhere, serves in the back of the kid's head because they don't know where to aim it, which is, yeah, it's a great point that you brought up, that, you know, at first they don't always kind of get it, but then they realize, hey, this, what I've learned in these fun games can be applied to the actual game, which is good. All right, so I'm going to move on. Hopefully I have enough slides to fill an hour. So you want to try?
We'll be good. Hey, there's a few questions on the back channel and stuff like that, and they're kind of asking about, like, they still don't quite understand sometimes games before skills, or why you would do something like that.
Sorry, I missed that. There was a lag there. I missed that comment.
That's all right.
The question.
Some people in the back channel don't quite understand like the games before skills, but it's actually kind of like games and combinations of skills too. So instead of just isolating skills, it's teaching skills while playing a game, and you try to come up with that game concept and that thing to teach while you're still teaching and introducing the skills. So it's not always standing still, stationary, volleyball passing like we were talking about before. It's more active games that are using the skills, so you kind of teach them together. Am I correct on that, or would you like to add a little bit more to that?
Yeah, no, like an easy way to think about it is that you play the teaching games for understanding, the conceptual idea of the space, the movement, and stuff like that. Then you might look at it and say, hold on, these guys get it. Okay, you might look at your class and say, okay, I've got a group over there that gets it. This group's kind of still working on how to move, or the whole class gets it. Then you stop and you say, okay, well, what skills do we need here? We need the dig. Okay, let's bring the dig in. Let's do the skill activities now so they get how to dig it. And you practice the dig and you do activities for your dig, but then you put it back into a game. So we're not taking 20 minutes of a lesson or 40 minutes of a lesson practicing the dig back and forth and then playing a volleyball game where it just kind of nothing really happens. So at least they're going to understand and have a contextual understanding of why they're doing this dig. They know that it's volleyball, but why am I doing this? How is this going to help me? So the concept helps them understand why they're doing the skills. And it's going to, those kids that are athletic are going to want to do it anyway, but the kids that aren't so athletic, that's where they're going to be like, well, I'm just standing here hitting a volleyball. This isn't this isn't fun. That makes sense.
Yeah, and then there's, again, we're like you say, if you're practicing, we'll just go back to volleyball, and you're practicing, the forearm pass. You can teach the forearm pass, but then you can play a little game called Castle Ball, and I'll put up a link here soon enough where it's a game type of environment where you're practicing the forearm pass and you're kind of competing against someone, in class. So again, it's isolating a skill while moving, while being active, while playing, a modified game, but it's not the real game. So again, it's just kind of thinking in just a little different way. So
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll keep going here. All right. So, it is a different way of teaching, like we were just talking about. But I think personally, after years of experience and watching kids and being in PE class and teaching all over the world, that I think it's beneficial because it gives kids a grounding for why we do stuff. Kids now, my 3-year-old, he knows why, and he asks why constantly. And I'm sure those of you that have parents out there will completely understand that, they ask why. And so if you think about our students, okay, we say we're using volleyball as a context again. We say we're playing volleyball, which is wicked. Let's do a concept and look at how we use space, and let's do an activity, a teaching games for understanding, so they have that understanding of the game of volleyball and how we use a skill, and then we look at the skills. Because it's active, we're not sitting students down. We can take short breaks to discuss a question here, or how could we move more into space? How could we get the volleyball over there? What could you do to get the pass back? They're short, quick. They're almost like a water break. We're not sitting down looking at like a skills board or talking to kids and drawing on the whiteboard for 20 minutes to explain how we get the 3 passes across. I found it really helpful at my last school in Singapore, that it was a great way to take a concept through a whole year. You could even do it through the grades, so that my SKs, my senior kindergarten kids, by the time I was teaching them in the grade 3, they'd played the games before, they understood how the games worked, and what I could do was, as it says, the last point there, I can adapt them and modify them to challenge them more. Maybe you stack a defensive team. Maybe you limit the amount of passes. Maybe you challenge them to get a certain amount of passes. You change the equipment. You go back to normal equipment rather than modified equipment. So there's lots of ways. You just have to be creative in some sports. I mean, the information is out there. That's for sure, for teaching games for understanding and in some ways game sense. But you just have to think outside the square a little bit. How can we keep the kids active? How can we get them so they really want to have the skill to be better at those games? If that all makes sense.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I mean,
have a drink of water.
that's fine. Definitely makes sense, and I just wanted to reiterate the teaching moments are unbelievable when you teach in that TGfU way, just because, like you say, they're active, they're moving, they can be involved in a game, practicing their skills. You can sit them down for 90 seconds to 120 seconds, and you can ask multiple questions. Everyone is silent because they've been active, they've been running, they've been moving, and then they all have something to share, and the lesson that can be learned through teaching that way, and the students just gain a much better understanding because of the way it's taught. So
yeah, but even those kids that all of a sudden you'll be watching a game and it might be a modified game, but you'll see all of a sudden they get it. And it's that light bulb moment and all of a sudden you see them spreading out. You see them passing it back forwards, not always going forwards. Passing and moving, which is huge in so many games and sports that we play. So it allows them to, when you hit one of those moments, it all becomes clear about why you modify these games.
The aha moments,
and,
yeah.
And change it up a little bit. Yeah, the eureka moment, exactly. Sorry. All right, well, I'll continue on. I don't know if we've got any more questions that need answering.
There is a question that just kind of popped up. There is a question that just kind of popped up, and it says, do you group the students by skill level to play the modified games, like 3-on-3? Or how do you set up grouping, or you talk about that later? Or?
No, we can talk about that now. It's up to you as the teacher. I mean, you might be more comfortable. It's your class. You know your students. For some things, I like to spread the stronger players out, and then you can play games that allow that the stronger players have to interact with the weaker players. But then sometimes it's nice to have the not so strong players playing a game. Maybe you can modify the rules a little bit more, just tweak them, so that they're all engaging and not being dominated by one player. If that makes sense. So I mean, it's up to you. You know your class better than anyone, which the kids are going to work well. You might have a really strong group of kids that they're going to get more out of just being put off to the side and said, here's the rules, go for it, where you can work on the weaker ones to get them up and build them up. Maybe they do a skill focus for a little bit because they need those skills to compete with the other kids. So I mean, it's 6 to 1, half a dozen the other. It's a hard thing for me to say exactly what to do. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I usually let them choose, and it kind of depends on the unit that we're in. And then they usually choose people that are kind of like skilled. But kind of like you said too, when you do something like that, it lets the diversification just happen. Where if you're in a basketball unit and 4 basketball players end up partnering up, you can take it to a whole new level. And then in the same sense, if there are people that don't play basketball except during the basketball unit in PE, when they all partner up, they feel really comfortable together, and they have a blast working together. And I think that then they really learn in that way because they're in that comfortable environment. They're happy with the people that they are, and then they get to work at their skill level to continue to get better too. So I find that works extremely well for my classes. You'll just have to, I just kind of have to watch out for the ones that like being silly together. But usually, you don't have those issues, or I don't have those issues too. And then as you get later on through the modified games and maybe into more competition, again for me at the middle school level, then I pick and choose teams, and I make sure it's an even split, and so everybody can kind of work together in that sense to get better. So I definitely like a combination of both things, but I see high levels of engagement when students can participate together that they like.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Cool. Thanks for hitting that question.
I had some good basketball games. Yeah. Hopefully that answered it. All right. Well, I'm going to continue on. So, I went to a PD just at school here in Bonn, and the presenters, they talked about they'd been to lots of workshops and been told how to do stuff, but no practical examples. So this is as I was writing this. So the next few sections look at, we're going to look at different activities that I might do or have tried and why and that kind of thing. So hopefully this is helpful to you guys. I'm sure they're all out there on the internet. All right, so I'll go into more detail. This is just like a start page. All right, you might come up with a different idea of how to use these, which is wicked. It just adds to the mix and just improves PE generally, which is great. So net and wall games, I look at time and space, how we can use it, and how it is different to the invasion games, and also movement. So net and wall games are your tennis, your badminton, your volleyball, your squash games, if you do squash or racquetball. Your invasion games, these are your basketballs, your handballs, your hockey. We're invading space. Your soccer, your American football. And striking and fielding is your cricket, if North Americans know what that is, but your cricket, your softball and baseball, those kind of activities. And all of these, some things are all going to have movement, they're just going to be different types of movement. They're all going to have strategies, but different types, tactics. And like I say down the bottom here, TGfU gives students an understanding of why we do skills, because they can see where it fits in the game and activity. And like we spoke before, that's why I usually start with the game before we do the skills, because they can relate back to the game and see, and they already understand that doing these skills is going to help me improve my game, not why are we doing the skills before they get to the game. All right, so I used to do the net and wall games with the younger students, grade 1s, grade 2s, grade 3s. So it's using modified games to teach the idea of space in volleyball. And this works in badminton as well, dividing the court into small sizes. In terms of volleyball, I like actually using a badminton court. I know you don't have the net height, but you can get the idea, and it divides really easily. Even using a full-size volleyball court, dividing it into, I think I had six small games on a full-size volleyball court. I'll get to the using tennis ball and dodgeballs to look at time and space. This one here, the next one, removing rackets and skills means concepts can be addressed. And again, add skills in, and once they get the idea, add the skill in as they get the concept. By taking away those rackets, if you look at badminton, when a younger student starts to play badminton, you can't actually have a rally. Grade 1 and 2, they might get the odd hit across, but at first they can't actually physically play the game because they don't have that skill set. But by understanding the game of why am I hitting the shuttle back and forth with a partner, or why am I hitting it up in the air, then they can be like, well, but now I can hit it further, which is always handy. You can say, well, you can, as a teacher, to help refocus a kid doing a skill activity. Why are we doing this? Okay, well, it's because you're going to get better at this part, which is going to help you with this part. And they begin to see those links, which is wicked. And always look at how to refer back to a concept in discussion. So when you stop at the end of class, or you have a 5-minute break, or even just moving around the class, TGfU isn't where you stand off to the side and say, this is amazing. It's where you have the opportunity to move around the small groups and discuss with them, how is this concept helping us? How can we use it in our game? How could we apply it here? How could we apply it there? So I have a couple of examples. One is Spaceball. Now, Spaceball I did with grade 3s, and this is not my invention. This has come from Game Sense. What it was is that I divided the court into 4. They each had their own space. on their side. So they divided their half of the court to 4, and they had to pass it 3 times between them to get it over the net. This worked extremely well for the volleyball for the younger kids. It actually led on to the likes of Newcomb ball, which is a very similar game to volleyball, but with throwing and catching. It meant that when we did start to introduce at grade 3 the digs and the sets, they knew that the first pass was usually a dig, because that's what they were throwing it at. Or they knew that the dig or the forearm pass was going to be one that when they were close to the ground, rather than just throwing them into a volleyball game and nothing happening. Short versus long. This is a great one for badminton. I've just done it recently with grade 7s. And you give them a narrow space, and I give them a tennis ball. And this is one I played at Teachers College years ago, and have since found more things about it. You challenge them to play badminton essentially with a tennis ball, only underarm throws, but it makes them think about hitting it long to the back of the court and driving their opponent back tactically before doing a drop shot. So they can start to address that idea of the movement on a court and how you move your opposition around without a racket. Because with a racket, even at grade 7, some of the kids, it wasn't coming naturally. So by doing short and long, and then you give them the racket back, and then they're looking at why they're hitting it long, and then why they're dropping it short. And along with that, we looked at the idea of time. How do I create myself time? How do I give myself time to recover? And we looked at the long shot and the high shot, the high clear, gave them time to recover and come back to be able to compete, not getting moved all around the court, and come back into the point. So, I mean, those are just a couple of netball. There's heaps of them out there. It's just something you have to find, and even, use Twitter, throw it out on Twitter. Any netball games that people know for doing this. And that's a good way to find out games and activities, which still to this day I find some of these activities out there that are TGfU, but I find them on, through Twitter, that has taken me to a link somewhere, and through a bit of research I found it. So I will continue. Any questions out there, Matt?
No, we're doing all right as of right now, but I like too just how you talked about just dividing up the courts. And we have 2 volleyball courts, and some of our classes are getting fairly large, and a lot of people just want to play volleyball on normal courts, and so we do the exact same thing. Instead of having just 2 games going on of volleyball, it's like we use our badminton courts and we put up our badminton nets, and yeah, the nets are low, but everyone is actively involved in the game, and we do 2-on-2 volleyball to kind of start, and we start with 1 bounce, and we use modified equipment, and it's just, again, just some of the best ways to get people actively involved, using their skills more frequently, practicing those things out in those modified games. And then once you go to those bigger courts, things completely change. So just love the points you're making, man. I'm learning so much too, just listening.
Sometimes you go to those big courts and you think it's working so well on a small court, and then you go to a big court and you realize, oh, hold on. And that's a clarification for you as a teacher. Okay, well, let's go back to the sport court, and what do we need to address? So we're still active, and how can we change what we're doing to go back into the big court and make it more successful? I did it this year, and I divided the big court into thirds. So we had 3 games on the bit, so they were using the length of the big court, but not the width. And then, okay, we cut it down into quarters. So we had 2 games. So they were using half a volleyball court, and at one stage they weren't even getting it to the back. So we brought the court narrower. So they were still playing on a volleyball court. We still had the full-size net. We were still using volleyball, but they weren't playing all the way to the back end of the court.
Yep.
Over time, you move those cones back, and then you take them away altogether. So they're still getting lots of contact time, but you've modified it so they have an understanding of the movement on a court without the immense amount of space that usually happens.
Yeah, because it's a lot of space to cover, even for middle schoolers. I mean, you're talking 6 people on a court, and that's a lot of space with, especially how quickly a volleyball moves too. And just share what someone just posted on today's meet, and it's like they play 14 small mini nets, like spaced out in the gym, and K2 plays, to start kind of one-on-one with the balloon too. So again, high levels
Yep.
of engagement, lots of activity, kids are having
Yeah.
fun, and then as you begin to make the concepts and skills harder, they're all excited about it because they get it, they understand it, they know what it looks like. So
And they've had success on those smaller nets.
yep.
So they can relate to, hey, if I do this, I'm going to get the ball over, and I've had a success and I've enjoyed it. Okay, now how can I do that on the big net? It kind of challenges them and pushes them intrinsically rather than us like telling them they have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we got about 20 minutes to roll through. I know you still got some great stuff going on here too. So
Okay. I'll continue.
yeah.
All right. So invasion games. Invasion games are limitless. Because we have so many, mainstream sports that are invasion games. Like I said, your football, your handball, lacrosse, American football, AFL, or Aussie rules, soccer, all these kind of rugby, touch rugby, all these sports require an invasion of space, which is the idea behind them. Again, this is kind of more a game sense term. I don't know if teaching games for understanding completely uses invasion games. So here are some activities. This is more talking about the space, 3 minutes in possession. One team has the ball for 3 minutes. They're the attacking team. They have to get as many passes as they can. Now the defending team doesn't just stand there. They have to, if they knock it down and intercept, they -1. So the attacking team has to move in and around space. They have to pass, they have to move. They can't run with the ball. They can pivot, but they can't run. The defenders, the only real rules are that they have to be 1 meter away, or about 3 feet. So it allows for movement and a high amount of activity for 3 minutes. You can also adapt it. You can make it a small space. You can make it. I haven't larger than a badminton court. Badminton courts are wicked for not just badminton, but also just they're a great space, and just even a third of a badminton court with 3 or 4 players is more than enough space. 5-point player. Same kind of basic principle, idea of position. How many I'm passing, okay, I get 1 point for every pass, but I have a 5-point player who's down the end. If I pass the ball to them, my team gets 5 points. So tactics and strategies come into this as well as space, so they can choose, do I pass it between one of my teammates and get 2 points, or do I try for the 5-point player? This also, they have to pass, they have to move. The rules are really similar for quite a few of these games. They can't move with the ball. It makes the people around them have to be aware of where the space is, which is really cool. Again, the defenders 1 meter back, but if they intercept it or they knock it down, they get the ball. So the kids have to think tactically in that one. That's a bit of a kind of grade 3, 4, and upwards kind of game. Defend the cone. I don't know, Matt. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I use defend the cone a lot. And maybe we're talking about different things, but I also I do a lot of like one-on-one, 2v2, like where they're just trying to score on cones, teaching more about offensive space and defensive space, and how to play on the ball defense and off the ball defense and things like that. But I use cones a lot just for goals, so you don't have to have a goalie standing around. And
Yeah,
honestly, they miss the goal a lot, but it gives them a lot of opportunities to try.
yeah,
And then they are exhausted while playing, which is cool.
yeah. Like you said, defend the cone. Using it essentially it is. It's the cone is a goal. The way I played is that I move. You have the boundaries, but you move the cone in 2 or 3 meters, which means they can move around the back of the cone. Um, you, you have a section coned off where the defenders can't go inside, but it means that they can move into that space. The attackers and the defenders have to think about how they defend that space. And again, as you said, you can have 2v2, you can have 3v3, you can have 4v4, or like my bottom point down there, like Mel said in her TGfU presentation, you can adapt it. You could have 3v2, you could have 4v2, just to stagger it or change it up so that you're working the defense more or you're working the offense more. Which is a really interesting thing that I hadn't thought of, to stack the teams to make a defense work harder. Sometimes you put in a different color bib, and that different color bib, that might be only attacking, so they're only attacking. What else have I got? Team ball. Team ball again is basically a play on 3 minutes, but the ball can be knocked down and turned over, and it's the first team to get to 5 points or 5 passes gets 1 point. The kids love this game. They get really competitive, and they all want to be involved because they have to get the 5 passes to get a point. If it's intercepted or knocked down, it's the other team's ball. And because there's no direction in your 3 minutes in your team ball games, because there's no actual your red's going one way, green's going the other way, it allows people to use the space more effectively because they can run anywhere on a court. You just give them the dimensions, they can go anywhere they want, but they're always passing, they're always moving. Communication and movement become part of the discussion naturally, along with space. They start thinking about passing and moving. Where if I pass it here, what do I need to do? Do I stand next to someone? Do I go and stand next to the defender, or do I find someone where no one is? Do I look how good my throw was, or am I waiting to get it back? What do we have? Again, add skills to a specific game. What I found with the younger grades is that you would start off basic, and then as you went, you might add in, like it says here, 3 bounces before passing. So you're introducing the skills as you go, and they're giving it a go. They're bouncing the ball and they're seeing where they go. Or 3 steps in handball. So you're introducing some handball rules or some basketball rules. You can regulate it to different passes. Maybe it's only a chest pass. Maybe it's only a bounce pass. Maybe it's only a high pass. It's completely up to you how you modify them once you've got the bones of the game going. I'm going to charge on here. Striking and fielding. So this is like your cricket, your baseball, your softball. And these are some games. 2 versus all. So 2 batters. You have 2 or 3 small games. There's 2 batters and maybe 3 or 4 fielders. The fielders had to be really engaged because they have to make sure that they stop the batters getting home. So the first batter bats, they get to first. The second batter has to get them home. So they have to think about where they're going to bat or where they're going to hit it. And the fielders have to think strategically about how we can stop them from getting back to home, because then they will continue. If the first batter moves to second and the second batter moves to first, switch out, they go to the field, two new players become batters. Hit four and go, hit four balls and run, the fielders do all the work. Again, small games, divide your class into 3 or 4 groups if you have space. Scatterball, same idea, but you're throwing. So they're looking at the throwing. How far, where are they throwing? Are they throwing it to space? Are they throwing it to someone? And again, that idea of space, but now it relates to striking and fielding games. Shotgun, just like clay pigeon shooting, but with a beach ball. Great for throwing and catching with the little kids. You have pairs or threes. One person throws up a beach ball and the other person has 2 tennis balls to try and hit it, which is really cool. Gauntlet, if anyone's ever seen gladiators out there, they used to run through the gauntlet with the foam balls being shot at them. Same idea, but you're throwing it at them. Those last two aren't really teaching games for understanding, but they're fun games that increase the skills of the kids. Right, focus on games that have a high activity level. Keeping them active. These kids, some of these kids might get 40 minutes per week. You want to keep them as active as you can, and that's where this is good because they're getting the skills or they're using the skills. Excuse me. You're encouraging them to use the skills, but they're always active. Small-sided games. Divide your gym, divide your court. You can have 2 or 3 games going. You just have to look at the angles of where they're hitting, so they're not going to hit it at someone. And then, like I said before, understanding of tactics comes into play. Like, how are we going to field to stop this person going the full round? How are we going to bat to make sure that we keep batting? The kids really like the 2 versus all one. All right, ways you could assess. I'm going to talk about the video, and I think it's an awesome one with the technology that most of us have access to in some way, shape, or form. Is if you can video a game of those students at the start of the unit, play one of the games, then play the same game at the end, or start with a basketball game, see what it looks like. Start with a basketball game at the finish after all your teaching games for understanding, and look back at it. They can reflect on that. They can look at how they moved. They could create goals about how they want to work on their movement, so they have an aim for that unit. And they can identify that how they can improve on that skill that they might have chosen or on that concept. Good old teacher observation. Watch the kids. See what they're doing. You can give formative feedback as you go through discussions. It could be as small as just pulling out and looking at one student saying, wow, look at the movement. Look how you passed and you moved when you're moving around, watching the kids play the games. I like this one. Students have an unrelated goal. So maybe nothing to do with the games that you're playing. You're not leading up into something. You said, okay, we're looking at teamwork and communication. You can play these games, and all of those things are going to come out. But they're playing it in a way that they might really enjoy. It might be a bit of a different switch to your traditional cooperative games. How are we doing for time, Matt?
I'll run about 6 to 7 minutes to go, so you're doing well.
I'll finish off these couple, and then hopefully we'll have time for questions. Sorry. All right. Don't think that don't be afraid to assess kids on a concept that they've learned with the Teaching Games for Understanding unit. You can do a whole unit on these activities. Don't go back to the can they dig, can't they dig. Look at, because that's putting one kid in a box and saying that they can do it or they can't do it. And again, it's student-centered, this stuff. I know students that they don't have the skills, but you watch it, they understand it, and you can see when you're watching a sometimes not so able student, they actually understand where they should be running, where they should be moving. The skills will follow. Everyone develops at different stages. So they might not be the strongest catch of the ball, but they're always moving into the right position. Also, if you do choose to do something like this, let the kids show their understanding in ways that you might not have thought of. Even like, I think I'm somewhat tech savvy, but the kids know way more than me. So they might have an app or a way of showing you their understanding that we don't know. So, you know, study. Give them that opportunity to challenge themselves. Again, iPads to record. These can be used for just informative feedback. You can look at movement in space using UberSense or Coach's Eye. Look at dartfish. You might have a student that is unwell. Give them the iPad. Here it is. Tap the number of times people throw and catch, or do they receive the ball, and things like that, so that the kids have like a kind of a visual representation of how much they're touching the ball. Are they moving? Do they move left? Do they move right? Is it going back? Is it going forward? Did we drop it? And again, record and look at communication. Record the kids playing and then show them. I found this really powerful with my younger kids. We plugged it into the projector and we said, okay, let's watch. And so we watched. And I said, what do you see? And they were like, well, we don't hear anything. Okay. So they were getting that they needed to communicate to sort it out. Where to next? Game Sense, a range of games. That's just a screenshot of the cards. They are somewhere on the internet. You kind of have to look pretty hard to find them. It lends itself to teaching games for understanding. Twitter. It's a great resource if you're not on it already. And I added in who I followed over the last little bit. Sorry, Matt, you're not the top one. I was just thinking of time. Ashley Casey, I've been following him recently, and he does really great podcasts. He actually does one about TGfU, which is really cool. You just have to go to his website. He usually has links through Twitter. Mal Hamada, who did the first one of these, is great to follow. And then there's just like a range of people that put out good stuff on Twitter all the time, which is really cool. And lastly, thanks to Matt for answering all the questions about this, even during his lunchtime one day. My wife for letting me bounce ideas off her, and a colleague of mine, Gil Grant, who read this and gave me some feedback on this presentation. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. And if there's any questions, feel free to chuck them out now or send me a tweet.
I think there was just a good general, like, gathered a lot of information from this stuff. There was a specific question on like rhythms and dance. Like, have you used a TGfU approach for that, or could you?
I don't know. No reason why not. I mean, it might not be TGfU, but you can look at the concept of space, like with the younger kids, for even playing, you know, your musical dots type thing, or creating pathways. It's throwing out dots and telling them to create them. I'm not sure. I haven't really thought about it in that sense. I mean, there might be some way. Again, it's something you'd have to look into. So I can't. Yeah. I don't have the magic answer for that one.
Well, I do. I think it comes back to are you teaching the concepts and the skills, and you know, how are you teaching them together? And I think that kind of turns it into that TGfU approach. So.
Exactly.
So I just want to thank David. I mean, that was fantastic. We were right on 59 minutes. Couldn't have been any better. In today's meet, I did post a link just for some feedback on the summit. If you can't join any of the Block 2 sessions, you can fill out that form now. If you are going to be joining some of the Block 2 sessions and listening in to a roundtable or Jody Larson's adapted PE session, just wait to fill that out then afterwards, so you can give us, you know, your complete feelings on the summit. So But I'm going to have to run to the middle school roundtable. Hopefully some of you are going to be joining us. I want to thank David for taking time away. I mean, I know he spent time working on this, and I know he took some time away from his family, to be doing this and to be doing it today. And David is here completely volunteering, to just spread the good word on TGfU. So, David, we appreciate you being a part of the summit. We appreciate you helping out, and we're extremely thankful for just you being here for our professional learning network. And there's quite a few thank yous coming across on today's meet too. So,
oh, that's good. Yeah, well, like I said to you before, I mean, I don't have the chance with two little kids and stuff like that to read a lot of textbooks about it, but it's what I know works, and it's what I've enjoyed teaching it, and I've seen the kids enjoy it too, which is really good. So I mean, thanks for letting me share it, and I hope something took something out of it. Yeah, I mean, I've got my Twitter handle down there if you need to have a look and send me a tweet. I'm quite happy to try and get around to answering them as soon as possible. But yeah, thanks to Matt for setting all this up, and it's a great thing to do, and to be able to get PD wherever you are in the world.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thanks, David. We'll talk to you again soon, but again, we appreciate your time. So, signing off for TGfU right now, there is a brain break going on with Jeff Mushkin. If you take a look at the Phys Ed Summit hashtag, or if you take a look at the conference program, you can click right on that link, and we are live on that. So I'm heading to the middle school roundtable, signing off.